Today we're talking about Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And our reading is in the Gospel of John. It's chapter 10, so the big number 10, and verses 1 through 10. But before we get to that, I want to kind of look at where we are, where we are in the context and the story of what's going on. Can you remember a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, that when Jesus made the blind man be able to see again? Can you remember he picked up some dirt and spat in it and made mud and put it on his eyes and then told him to go wash in the river, and all of a sudden the man could see, and it was wonderful. And what happened next is that the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the Jewish people, started to interview this man and his parents. And his parents were very nervous being interviewed by the Pharisees, because here's the thing: the religious leaders could excommunicate somebody from society, which is a big word to mean that they kicked them out. That they said, you can't be a part of our group anymore. You can't eat with us. You can't go to the store with us. You can't be around us anymore. It's a really harsh thing to do. So his parents were very nervous and scared, and they didn't even want to respond to these Pharisees. So they said, ask him what happened. We don't know what happened. And the man, you should look it in the Bible, and it's an interesting back and forth between these Pharisees and the man. And the man is saying, how else could he make a blind person, somebody who's blind from birth, be able to see again if he's not the Son of God? And the Pharisees were mad about that, because they didn't want to hear about somebody walking around saying they were the Son of God. And they didn't want anybody in their community saying that such a thing had happened. So they kicked the man out. They excommunicated him. He told them the truth about Jesus. And Jesus was the Son of God. And they didn't even want to think about it. So they kicked him out. And Jesus finds the man and talks to him and tells him that, you have seen me. You are part of my group, and I love you, and you will be saved. And he's talking about the other people who are walking around and they can see. Their eyes are working and they can see, but they're blind to Jesus. So he's calling them blind, and the Pharisees overhear him talking to the blind man, the man who was blind, and they say, you're not talking about us, are you? We're not blind. And Jesus says, basically what he says to them is, you can see me. You know what I did. You know. And you're still refusing to admit it? That's sin. So he's kind of calling them out on being bad religious leaders. The community trusts them and follows them, and they are not leading the community closer to God. They're not. So now we'll read John chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. And this is Jesus talking, and he's talking to these Pharisees. Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him, because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him, because they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again Jesus said to them, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So in this short paragraph, Jesus has told this group of people, I am a gate and I'm a shepherd. How can Jesus be a gate and a shepherd? And you remember how we talked about an allegory. An allegory is when somebody uses a story, they kind of paint a picture for us so we can imagine this picture, and it helps us understand what they're trying to tell us. So, and we also need to know something about shepherds. The Hebrew people they knew about shepherds. It was a common thing, and they knew how shepherds operated. And most of us aren't exposed to sheep herding today. But this is a cool fact. Did you know that when there are big groups of herds together, so this shepherd's herd and this shepherd's herd and this shepherd's herd, and they're all together in one big sheepfold all together, that one shepherd can walk in, and he walks in amongst all of these other sheep, and he gives out one special call. Maybe it's a certain type of whistle, or maybe, it's just a certain type of call. And his sheep hear that call, and they say, oh, that's my shepherd. And he makes me feel good. He always finds good water and good food for me, and he keeps me safe. He's calling me. I need to follow. So his sheep hear his voice, and they'll leave all the other sheep, and they get out of there, and they follow their shepherd. And he can guide them. He can make calls and let them know where he is. So he walks ahead of them. He doesn't walk in between them or behind them. He walks ahead of them, and they follow him because they trust him. They say, I love the life that this shepherd gives me. I got it pretty good. This guy takes care of me. So they'll follow him. And that is how we hear Jesus' voice. Jesus is saying, I'm like a shepherd. It's interesting that he says the shepherd calls their sheep by name. So your name is individual, right? Like your name is your name. So yes, it means you, but in this time, they even thought that your name represented part of you, who you were essentially, like what made you you. So it's a very intimate way to call somebody is what he's saying. He's saying, I know these sheep. I know them. I know what makes them tick. I know which ones are going to run off to the left when I start going right. I know which ones are going to want to lie down and not get up. I know which ones are going to keep eating even when I tell them to quit eating. I know which ones are just going to stand there when I tell them it's time to drink water. He knows. And that's how Jesus knows us. He knows us. He knows that when it's time for us to do the right thing, the thing that Jesus wants us to do, maybe it's to, maybe there's a new kid in school or on your block, and it's best for you to go and welcome them and let them know that there is kindness and love. But nobody else is doing that. In fact, some other people are making fun of that kid, and you're nervous and scared to do it, but you know it's the right thing to do. Well, Jesus knows how you feel. Jesus is saying, I know, Maggie. I know that you don't really want to do this thing, but trust me, it's going to be okay. And he calls you by name, and he's leading you. And you know when Jesus is calling you, and you can follow that loving, gentle voice. And he leads us to the right place. Because what Jesus is saying is, if it's a stranger, if it's not the loving shepherd, if the stranger is trying to lead the sheep, he's up to something. He's not going to do something good. Like maybe he's somebody coming in trying to steal a sheep so that he can sell it, or so that he can eat it himself, or trying to do something dishonest. So what Jesus is saying is, if we follow Jesus, and we listen to what Jesus wants us to do, we'll be safe and we'll be loved, and we won't ever go astray. The Pharisees were telling the people dangerous things, that if you challenge our power, we're going to kick you out. And that's God's way. That's not God's way. That's not God's way at all. Even if somebody does something terrible or hurtful, God will still love them. And it's not really our human job to decide who God loves and who God doesn't anyway, right? Just the fact that the Pharisees are trying to get into people's relationship with God and say you can't be a part of our community and you're evil and sinful, that's not God's way. Something else that Jesus says is, he says, I am the gate. And anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. So, sheep were often, and sometimes still are, like they'll be in a fenced area, sometimes up against a cave or in a cave, but the gate area, there's very often not an actual door or a gate there. And what a shepherd will do is when he sleeps, he lies down in the spot where the gate is. So he's lying right there. So if he's lying right there, then nobody or no animals can come in through that gate and hurt his sheep. And also, his sheep won't wander out of that gate and get lost. So it's his loving way of literally laying down his body there to protect his sheep from harms on the outside and from bad decisions on the inside. So Jesus is saying that is how he is. He's protecting us from our own choices and protecting us from outside influences. And also, if the sheep want to go to the very best place, they will go through the way of the shepherd's gate with the shepherd. So the Pharisees were saying, these are our rules. You need to follow our rules or you won't get to God. You will not be close to God. And one of their rules was, don't listen to this crazy man Jesus because he's dangerous. If you listen to Jesus, you're going to be kicked out. And Jesus says that's not the way at all. That's the opposite of the way. Jesus is saying, if you follow me, if you listen to me, then you'll be safe and you will be close to God. So I think that's all the points I had. It's a lot, I know. Jesus is the shepherd. Jesus is the gate. Really, it's just that Jesus is taking care of us. And sometimes it can be hard to have faith or to trust that, but he is. He is there and he is telling us. Today in church, we're also going to hear Psalm 23, and we will read that before our prayer time. So this is Psalm number 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff. They comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. So if I really were a sheep, I'd want that. I'd want to have green pastures and nice still waters, not crazy choppy waters or stagnant waters. I'd want a shepherd that took the best care of me to keep me super healthy and peaceful and safe. Even though enemies are around, he's still taking care of his precious sheep. And that's what Jesus is telling us. He's telling us that the Pharisees have come so that they can lead people astray. They're not leading people closer to God. They're not giving people a full life with God. Jesus is the shepherd, that he has come so that he can lead us to the fullest life possible. He wants us to just grow and blossom and just have the most beautiful, peaceful, abundant life. Abundant is a word that means just full of good things. It's just full. There is an abundance of joy, an abundance of peace, an abundance of all of our God-given emotions and feelings and experiences, because we can have those experiences all day long. And we can remember that Jesus is the shepherd who is leading us through those experiences. So we'll have a moment, a short moment of prayer. Oh, first let me show you our craft. So this was just an idea I had, again, crafts that you can make just with stuff at home. So I took a paper plate and I cut it to make it smaller. And on the back, I used black construction paper and just put 2 strips. You could also just color a piece of paper if you wanted. And then I put cotton balls all over the plate. And you could draw a picture if you want, but I had an extra photograph on hand, so I cut out a Samuel's face and put 2 little sheep ears on him. So now you can have a reminder. You could put this on your wall or someplace, and it reminds you that you're like a sheep, and Jesus is your good shepherd, and he is lovingly leading you and calling you to an abundant life with God all the time. So you could also play a game with your family, the Ba game. So one family member closes their eyes, and the other family members have to ba, but change your voice and see if you can fool the person who has their eyes closed and see if they can guess who's saying ba. And another idea is an idea with cotton balls. You can take cotton balls and put with a marker just one color. So say my color is red and your color is green. And then we're going to have a section of the floor and we each get a straw. And I have to get all the red cotton balls behind my section of the floor, and you have to get all the green cotton balls behind your section of the floor, and we see who can do it fastest. It's hard, but it's fun and it's silly. It's even more fun if other people are watching, because they can join in and laugh and have fun with you. And I hope you do that. I hope you have fun with your family this week and have great discussions about how much Jesus loves you and he is your good shepherd. Okay, so now prayer time. And this is, offer up anything that you'd like to offer to God. If it's something that you're grateful for, or something that you're worried about, or something that you just want to share with God, and you can just share it in the simplest way, and he knows, and he's listening. So we'll take a couple moments, and then we'll say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. I hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you for joining me. And live life abundantly, because that's how Jesus wants you to live it.